Have you ever wondered how much everyday life in America has changed since the 1980s? Back then, children rode in the backs of pickup trucks, people smoked in restaurants, and even kids could buy cigarettes from vending machines without a single question. It feels unbelievable today, but those things were once considered normal, woven into family life and community routines. In this video, we'll rewind time to uncover 25 shocking habits from the 1980s that are now completely illegal. Stay with me, because the final one will leave you stunned. 1. Drinking and driving was socially tolerated. On a warm Friday evening in the 1980s, taverns glowed with neon lights and laughter drifted into parking lots where cars idled. It was ordinary to finish a few beers, slap friends on the back, and head for the driver's seat without hesitation. The phrase designated driver was still foreign campaigns against drunk driving, only whispers in the background. Many communities treated risk as a joke, shrugging at the idea that alcohol dulled the senses. Accidents were frequent, but the culture still framed it as bad luck rather than predictable danger. Behind the wheel, the scent of beer lingered in upholstery, a quiet testimony to the night's indulgence. Looking back, it feels chilling how many lives were gambled in exchange for convenience. Today, even a single drink can bring legal consequences, reshaping how society views the road. Yet the memory remains of a time when leaving a tavern meant sliding into the driver's seat as if nothing were wrong. 2. Smoking everywhere, even at dinner tables. Step into a family restaurant in the 1980s and your senses were assaulted by smoke before food. Parents puffed away as children poked straws into sodas while ashtrays overflowed beside half-eaten plates. Grocery shoppers strolled aisles with cigarettes dangling from lips, and even small cars became smoke chambers with windows rolled up tight. Non-smokers had little choice but to inhale, with smoking sections separated only by invisible lines that did nothing to stop the haze. Health warnings existed, but culture treated them as background noise drowned out by glowing advertisements and Marlboro billboards. Families finished meals with the scent of secondhand smoke clinging to hair and clothes, part of everyday life. Over time, rising health studies and lawsuits forced change, pushing smoking bans into law. Today, the idea of a cigarette in a grocery store or diner feels absurd. Still, many remember when meals came with menus, plates, and an ashtray delivered without question. 3. Cigarette vending machines within reach of kids. In the corner of bowling alleys and diners during the 1980s, glowing vending machines hummed with temptation. All it took was a handful of quarters, a tug on the lever, and out slid a fresh pack of cigarettes. No ID, no questions, just the clank of metal and the thrill of forbidden independence for teenagers testing boundaries. Tobacco companies placed machines where kids lingered with cartoon camels and cowboys decorating the fronts as if to welcome them. Adults rarely objected, considering the machines as harmless as candy dispensers, yet every transaction planted habits that could last a lifetime, a quiet strategy hidden in plain sight. By the 1990s, regulations began phasing them out, recognizing the damage. Today, such machines are relics of a time when access to tobacco was shockingly casual. Do you remember the excitement of pulling that lever, the pack falling into your hand as easily as gum or chips? 4. Toy guns that looked like the real thing. Neighborhood kids in the 1980s raced through backyards clutching black-painted toy pistols, almost indistinguishable from the real thing. The weight felt solid in the hand and the shiny barrels gleamed like genuine firearms. Cops driving by often shrugged, assuming it was just children at play, while parents saw it as a rite of passage for boys. The danger even then was obvious. In a tense moment, no one could tell toy from weapon. Yet culture dismissed those fears, framing it as harmless fun that built responsibility. Later laws required neon colors and orange tips, but in that decade, realism was the selling point. Looking back, it is chilling to imagine children waving such toys in public without fear. Today, the same scene could trigger tragedy, but memory softens it into playtime nostalgia. Do you recall gripping a plastic pistol that felt more like a weapon than a toy? 5. Fireworks in the hands of children. On the 4th of July in the 1980s, roadside stands sold Roman candles and bottle rockets to anyone with a few dollars. Children clutched paper bags filled with sparks while parents turned a blind eye, sometimes even sending them to buy fireworks. Lighting fuses with little or no supervision was nearly a childhood tradition, though burns and lost fingers were common story. Families shrugged at the risks, framing them as part of the holiday thrill. Adults grilled burgers while kids ran through yards with lit firecrackers, laughter echoing against the night sky. Over time, safety campaigns and new laws restricted sales, replacing freedom with caution. Today, fireworks often require permits and adult oversight, changing the ritual completely. Still, for many, the memory of gripping a bag of bottle rockets remains vivid. It was danger disguised as celebration, and no 4th of July felt complete without it. 6. Riding in the back of pickup trucks. After Little League games or Sunday picnics in the 1980s, children piled into the open beds of pickup trucks. They stood tall, hair whipping in the wind, gripping the rails as the vehicle rumbled through town. Parents waved from porches, unconcerned about sharp turns or sudden stops that could throw kids onto pavement. For communities, it was freedom, fun, and togetherness more valuable than safety rules. The risks were undeniable, but culture treated them as part of childhood. Gradually, new laws forbade passengers in open beds, recognizing the danger. Today, the image of kids laughing on a moving truck feels almost reckless. Yet nostalgia paints it with golden light, recalling warm nights under wide skies. For many, that simple ride remains one of the purest tastes of freedom ever offered. If you're enjoying this trip, hit like and subscribe for more memories that keep history alive. 7. Station wagons as rolling playgrounds. Long summer road trips in the 1980s turned family station wagons into moving playgrounds. With seatbelts ignored, children sprawled across the flat cargo space or slid from seat to seat as the car curved. Pillows and blankets built forts in the back while siblings argued over window space. Parents rarely insisted on restraints, treating buckling up as optional or unnecessary. The joy was chaotic but cherished, full of games, naps, and laughter echoing down highways. Laws mandating seatbelt use slowly shifted norms, and car safety campaigns reframed freedom as risk. Today, such scenes feel shocking, but to families, then it was ordinary. Nostalgia lingers in the memory of lying flat, gazing through the rear window at stars. It was reckless by today's measure, but for many, those rolling playgrounds carried the essence of family adventure. 8. Kids left home alone overnight. In the 1980s, it was not unusual for 12-year-olds to babysit siblings while parents went out late. Sometimes kids even managed houses overnight, armed with a pizza box and a list of phone numbers. Instructions were simple: lock the doors, do not answer calls, and call neighbors if anything happened. Risks were real fires, accidents, emergencies, but independence was valued more than fear. Children wore the responsibility as a badge of maturity, bragging at school about holding down the fort. Today, leaving young kids alone overnight could result in serious consequences for parents. But in that decade, it was framed as trust, even love. Looking back, the thrill of staying in charge remains a vivid childhood memory. For many, the glow of the television and the creak of the empty house still echo in their minds. 9. Children given sips of beer at barbecues. Backyard barbecues in the 1980s often featured a quiet ritual: parents handing children sips of beer. Adults framed it as harmless, a way to demystify alcohol or teach responsibility. Kids laughed at the bitter taste wrinkling faces as relatives chuckled in approval. It was woven into family gatherings, summer afternoons filled with smoky grills and plastic cups. The risks were rarely considered, with laws against underage drinking treated casually. Over time, stricter enforcement made even a sip unlawful, reshaping what families viewed as acceptable. Today, such a gesture might draw outrage or legal action, yet memory softens it into an odd but tender rite of passage shared across generations. Do you recall the face you made after that first warm gulp, cheered on by smiling relatives around the grill? 10. Smoking on airplanes. Boarding an airplane in the 1980s meant stepping into a cabin where smoke lingered like a curtain. Ashtrays sat in every seat and passengers lit cigarettes mid-flight while attendants served coffee. Smoking and non-smoking sections existed, but the haze drifted freely, blurring boundaries. Families traveled through clouds, children coughing quietly while parents shrugged. The culture catered to smokers, dismissing complaints from those who objected. Gradually, rising awareness and mounting health studies forced bans, clearing skies above 30,000 feet. Today, the idea of lighting a cigarette on a plane is absurd, unthinkable, and strictly illegal. Yet for those who lived it, the memory of a glowing ash and the hum of engines remains haunting. Flying then was as much about smoke as about wings, a strange relic of the past. If you're enjoying this trip, remember to like and subscribe so these memories keep flying forward. 11. Hitchhiking as everyday transportation along highways and small-town roads of the 1980s, the sight of a thumb extended toward passing cars was routine. Teenagers heading to the mall or students trying to get home trusted the kindness of strangers. Parents often reminded kids to be careful, but few forbade it entirely. Drivers saw it as neighborly duty, pulling over to help someone without hesitation. Stories of danger existed, yet most people dismissed them as rare urban legends. Hitchhiking was cheap, convenient, and woven into daily life for those without cars. Over time, tragic headlines and public campaigns shifted perceptions, turning trust into fear. Today, the idea of sending a child into a stranger's car is unimaginable, even reckless. Still, the memory lingers of roadside journeys fueled by trust, adventure, and the freedom of an outstretched thumb. 12. Trick-or-treating until midnight. Halloween in the 1980s stretched long past bedtime, with children roaming neighborhoods under glowing streetlights. Pillowcases filled with candy grew heavier as groups crossed busy streets and rang endless doorbells. Parents stayed home trusting kids to return whenever they were done. Older children staged pranks with shaving cream or toilet paper while younger ones chased the thrill of sweets. The darkness added excitement, turning each block into an adventure. Safety checks were rare and no one hovered with flashlights or cell phones. In later decades, strict curfews and parental supervision shortened the holiday freedom. Today, trick-or-treating ends early, monitored by watchful adults with glowing phones. But nostalgia recalls the wild joy of a pillowcase so heavy it nearly ripped proof of Halloween's magic. 13. First graders walking to school alone in the 1980s, entire groups of 6-year-olds marched to school with backpacks bouncing, no adults in sight. Crossing streets and braving weather was considered a natural lesson in independence. Parents worked early shifts and buses rarely covered every block, making walking the practical choice. Shopkeepers waved, neighbors watched, and communities quietly trusted themselves to keep kids safe. Children felt proud, every step a badge of maturity and courage. The risks of traffic or strangers seemed distant, overshadowed by necessity. Over time, fears of safety and legal consequences erased this simple ritual. Today, a child walking alone, even a few blocks, may raise alarms. Yet memory preserves the pride of small feet carrying big responsibility on sidewalks each morning. 14. Playgrounds on asphalt and steel public playgrounds of the 1980s were built to last, not to cushion. Towering metal slides glared in summer, sun scorching bare legs as kids tumbled down. Monkey bars stretched high, daring children to climb past comfort. Beneath it all lay asphalt or concrete, unforgiving surfaces where bruises and scrapes were daily trophies. Parents rinsed wounds with hoses, sending kids right back to climb again. Teachers on recess duty barely glanced at spills, expecting resilience. Over time, padded mulch and rubber mats replaced hard blacktop, reshaping playground safety. Today, liability and design prevent the chaos once considered ordinary. But many still recall the thrill of spinning on a metal merry-go-round, clinging tight as the world blurred. 15. BB gun battles in the neighborhood weekends in the 1980s often erupted into BB gun skirmishes between kids. The guns looked real, clicked like rifles, and left sharp stings on bare skin. Goggles were rare and rules were almost non-existent, making injuries common. Welts and bruises became badges of honor displayed proudly at school on Monday. Parents shrugged, treating the games as harmless rites of passage. The risks to eyes, teeth, or skin were present but downplayed by culture. Gradually, laws and awareness reframed BB guns as dangerous rather than playful. Today, such battles would prompt panic and likely police involvement. Yet memory clings to the sting of pellets and the laughter that followed, reckless but unforgettable. 16. Riding bikes without helmets, children of the 1980s treated bicycles as passports to freedom. Helmets were rare, dismissed as something for racers or overly cautious parents. Kids sped down steep hills, popped wheelies, and raced traffic with scraped knees as proof of adventure. Night rides under moonlight added to the thrill, with baseball cards clipped to spokes for engine sounds. Some even removed brakes to lighten bikes, stopping with worn-out sneakers. Parents glanced from porches but rarely interfered, trusting kids to bounce back from crashes. Over time, rising awareness and laws made helmets standard, reframing recklessness as danger. Today, no parent lets a child race the streets without gear. Still, nostalgia recalls the wind in your face and the daring joy of nothing but hope to keep you safe. 17. Public pools with no lifeguard summers in the 1980s meant hours at the community pool with little or no supervision. Signs warned, swim at your own risk, but no one paid attention. Children cannonballed into deep ends, played chicken, and roughhoused freely. Older kids sometimes acted as unofficial lifeguards, though they often joined the chaos themselves. Parents dropped children off and returned hours later, trusting instinct and luck. Accidents happened, yet communities treated them as part of growing up. Over time, lawsuits and liability concerns made unsupervised pools nearly impossible. Today, trained staff and strict rules dominate aquatic spaces. Yet many still remember plunging into chlorine clouds, fearless, wild, and free beneath the summer Sunday. 18. Dangerous chemistry labs at school. High school chemistry in the 1980s often felt more like chaos than controlled learning. Open flames danced from Bunsen burners while toxic powder sat in open jars. Students melted rulers, set papers ablaze, or mixed random chemicals for fun. Teachers sometimes left the room trusting teenagers not to go too far. The smell of sulfur and smoke often lingered after class, proof of risky experiments. Protective goggles were optional and accidents were considered lessons in caution. Over time, lawsuits and stricter standards reshaped labs into safe, watered-down environments. Today, most classrooms use prepackaged kits with little danger. Yet memory holds on to the thrill of striking a match and wondering if the whole lab might explode. 19. Pocket knives in backpacks. In the 1980s, many boys carried pocket knives to school without suspicion. They whittled sticks at recess, sharpened pencils, or traded blades like baseball cards. Teachers often knew but looked the other way, seeing knives as tools, not threats. Cuts and scrapes were common but shrugged off as part of growing up. Parents encouraged responsibility, framing knives as symbols of maturity. Trading fancy handles or larger blades became playground currency. Over time, rising violence and policy changes turned knives into contraband. Today, even a small blade can trigger lockdowns and police calls. Still, nostalgia recalls flicking open a knife under a tree, carving initials into wood, and feeling grown. 20. Peanut butter everywhere at school. School cafeterias in the 1980s overflowed with peanut butter. Sandwiches, cookies, and crackers filled lunchboxes and vending machines alike. Children traded halves of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches without hesitation. Teachers offered peanut butter as emergency lunches for kids who forgot theirs. Bake sales featured nut squares and cookies with no warning labels. Allergies were rarely acknowledged with the assumption that everyone loved the creamy spread. Over time, awareness of severe reactions reshaped policies leading to outright bans in many schools. Today, peanut-free zones and strict rules dominate cafeterias. Yet memory clings to sticky fingers, grape jelly stains, and the comfort of a lunch that seemed eternal. 21. Soda machines in school hallways. In the 1980s, glowing soda machines stood proudly in school corridors beside lockers. Kids lined up between classes, dropping quarters for icy cans of cola or neon-colored Mountain Dew. Teachers often ignored it, some even joining the rush for a midday caffeine hit. The sugar buzz fueled chatter, energy, and chaos in classrooms. Schools profited quietly, using vending money to fund sports or field trips. Parents rarely complained, assuming soda was harmless refreshment. Over time, research linked sugar overload to health risks, shifting culture away from casual consumption. Today, vending machines sell water or juice under strict guidelines. Still, memory holds the thrill of hearing the clunk of a can dropping bubbles fizzing before the first sip. 22. Lemonade stands without permits. On suburban corners of the 1980s, children set up card tables stacked with Dixie cups and pitchers. Lemonade was stirred with too much sugar, brownies sliced on paper plates, and neighbors stopped without hesitation. There were no permits, no inspections, only smiles and loose change exchanged. Parents encouraged the ventures, framing them as lessons in independence. Strangers trusted the sticky counters and mystery recipes as part of community charm. Over time, regulations and liability concerns ended this innocent enterprise. Today, children must navigate permits or bans just to sell lemonade. Nostalgia remembers the pride of counting coins after sunset, sticky hands clutching hard-earned dimes. It was business without red tape, a ritual of childhood entrepreneurship. 23. Bake sales without ingredient labels. School bake sales in the 1980s felt like sugar carnivals. Tables overflowed with homemade cookies, brownies, and fudge wrapped in plastic wrap. Nobody labeled ingredients, and allergies were seldom acknowledged. Kids traded desserts, hoarded cupcakes, or spent lunch money on gooey slices. Teachers encouraged buying more since funds went toward field trips or team uniforms. Peanut butter bars and nut brownies sat openly beside everything else. Over time, allergy awareness and strict safety rules changed the tradition. Today, many schools require packaged goods with full labels, but memory recalls biting into a mystery brownie sweet and rich without a single thought about risk. 24. Toys filled with choking hazards. Toy stores of the 1980s were lined with marbles, jacks, and miniature cars brimming with tiny parts. Bright packaging promised fun, but ignored obvious dangers for toddlers. Small magnets and pieces scattered across carpets, often swallowed by curious kids. Parents accepted accidents as part of growing up, rarely blaming manufacturers. Warnings were minimal and age restrictions loosely applied. Over time, safety commissions cracked down, pulling risky toys from shelves. Today, strict labeling and age guidelines dominate aisles. Still, many remember the joy of opening a new toy only to lose half its pieces under the couch. Childhood fun carried hidden hazards disguised as play. 25. Liquor-filled chocolates on store shelves. In grocery aisles of the 1980s, shiny wrappers concealed chocolates laced with rum or brandy. These sweets sat beside ordinary candy, easily ending up in children's hands. Relatives sometimes gifted them, laughing at the grimace kids made after biting. The alcohol was mild, but the principal startling treats openly sold with liquor inside. Adults brushed it off, framing it as harmless exposure. Over time, regulations restricted sales, shifting marketing toward adults only. Today, such candies are carefully labeled or hidden in specialty stores. Yet, memory recalls the surprise of biting into chocolate and tasting the sharp burn of spirits. Childhood innocence collided with grown-up indulgence wrapped in foil. 26. Corporal punishment in schools. Across much of the South and Midwest during the 1980s, teachers paddled students as routine discipline. A trip to the hallway or principal's office often ended with 3 swats from a wooden board. Parents usually supported it, believing strictness built character. Classmates whispered about who got licks that week, trading stories in hushed tones. For children, the ritual carried shame but also normalization. Over time, shifting attitudes and legal reforms banned corporal punishment in most states. Today, even a stern grip can spark investigations. But memory lingers of classrooms where authority meant books in one hand and a paddle in the other. Discipline was physical, swift, and accepted. 27. Parents spanking kids in public. In grocery aisles and church parking lots of the 1980s, parents corrected misbehavior with open swats. Strangers nodded approvingly, echoing the belief that discipline was love. The phrase, "spare the rod, spoil the child," was lived, not just quoted. Children often cried briefly, then returned to shopping carts or pews. Public spanking was normalized, woven into family routines. Over time, social attitudes shifted, framing such actions as violence. Today, a single slap can bring police or social workers. Yet many recall the sting followed by parental reassurance, a complicated memory of love and fear. It was correction in plain sight, unquestioned and immediate. 28. Leaving kids in cars. While shopping, parents in the 1980s often left children in cars with windows cracked. Vinyl seats burned in summer heat while juice boxes kept kids occupied. Errands at post offices or grocery stores passed quickly without concern. Some children napped, others played with locks or read comics. Communities trusted that nothing would happen, framing it as efficient parenting. Over time, awareness of risks and tragic incidents ended the practice. Today, leaving a child unattended, even briefly, can result in legal action. But nostalgia recalls the quiet boredom of waiting, tracing patterns on fogged glass. It was a strange freedom, both dull and oddly peaceful. 29. Sunbathing with baby oil summer afternoons in the 1980s shimmered with the glow of baby oil. Teens spread it across skin, laying on rooftops or beaches with silver reflectors under chins. The goal was deep tans framed as healthy and glamorous. Sunscreen was rare and peeling burns were shrugged off as steps toward bronze. Magazines praised golden skin, ignoring the hidden dangers. Over time, dermatologists and studies exposed the link to cancer. Today, tanning beds and oils are heavily restricted, with SPF demanded everywhere. Still, many remember the pride of tan lines and the sting of sunburn, a beauty ritual, dangerous yet celebrated. 30. Open container drinking and public picnics, beaches and concerts of the 1980s often featured open coolers of beer. Families mingled with college kids sipping openly under the sun without shame. Police ignored it unless rowdiness erupted, treating public drinking as leisure. Bottles clinked, tabs popped, and salty breezes carried the hum of conversation. Over time, drunk driving concerns and ordinances spread, banning open containers. Today, patrols, ticket violators, and beaches display warning signs. Yet memory lingers of laughter mixed with the fizz of beer under summer skies. It was carefree indulgence, ordinary then, astonishing now. Public spaces once mirrored backyards, blurring private and communal rituals. Looking back at these 25 moments from the 1980s, it's striking how quickly normal can become unthinkable. What once felt ordinary, whether it was riding in the back of a truck, lighting fireworks without supervision, or sipping soda in a school hallway, now feels almost reckless through modern eyes. But that is the beauty of memory. It reminds us not only of how much the world has changed, but also of the freedom, innocence, and trust that once defined everyday life. These stories are more than quirky details. They are glimpses of a society in transition caught between tradition and modern caution. They remind us that culture is always moving, reshaping what we believe is safe, acceptable, or even possible. So tell me, out of all these memories, which one surprised you most or brought back a moment from your own past? Share your story in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep these memories alive for the generations to come.